What's going on, everybody? Welcome into our live post Packers practice chat. Easy for me to say. Thanks so much for being here. Always excited to talk about everything that happened at Packers practice. Of course, per usual, tomorrow will be the full entire breakdown of everything that you need to know, but we'll go through the quick hitters, kind of the main plays, and some of the stuff that you definitely want to know from today's practice. Wasn't the most, noteworthy practice that you'll ever have. Sunday practice, the only weekend practice outside of family night. So, of course, preseason, family nights, you get a couple of those. But if you were hoping to attend a Packers practice on a Saturday or Sunday, this was pretty much your only opportunity to do so again, other than family night next Saturday. I will get to as many questions as I possibly can after we kind of go through the main takeaways. Have some time here at Sunday. So we'll, again, try to answer all your questions. Of course, get those super chats in, and we'll see what we can do as soon as we kind of go through the rundown here. We did get some good news on the injury front. Amar Johnson, the running back, the undrafted free agent running back, did make his, what seemingly was full return to Packers practice. He was out there not only an individual, but doing some teamwork as well. So it was great to see him out there. He had one particular play where he would have been down relatively quick, but again, they don't tackle him or bring him to the ground. And he showed off after that some really impressive burst on the play and just a little bit of juice in the open field that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So we'll kind of keep an eye on him, but great to see him back out there. And then Aaron Banks and Savion Williams both did return to injury or from injury in some capacity. Both of them were basically just doing some individual drills. Savion also did some work to the side. For Savion, again, we talked about this the other day, but from a concussion standpoint, this seems to be in a pretty good, situation, all things considered. The fact that the day after he was immediately out there and on the sidelines and, talking to teammates and things like that, any sort of serious concussion and you're not by the team at all. And then the fact that the second day after he's actually out there doing some individual drills, that's a great sign for Savion Williams. I did have a couple of people ask of like, how does Savion Williams suffer a concussion in practice? Now, I don't know for sure. I don't know what the play was, but remember, there was that play that he fully laid out for a Malik Willis pass, trying to come down with the ball, and he did kind of go down hard to the ground. My assumption, again, this is just guessing, would be that that's when he kind of hit his head on the ground and had a little bit of a concussion sort of issue there, but could have been a billion different things, could have been in something different totally altogether, but that would be my guess. But again, great to see him back out there. And then Aaron Banks again as well, just doing individual work. Didn't do anything in team drills or anything like that, but still a good sign that Banks was out there practicing in some capacity. All right, couple of the big plays from the day. Probably one of my favorites was one of the last plays of the day. So the 2-minute drill was not much of a 2-minute drill. There was, I believe, 9 seconds left on the clock. You were down by 6, 1st and 10, but you were on the opposing teams or the defense's 12-yard line. So you're 12 yards from the end zone, but only 9 seconds, no timeouts, and you've got to punch the ball in for a touchdown. The twos didn't do much. It was interesting because Malik Willis threw over the middle to Luke Musgrave. He was easily down before the end zone. And it felt like the offense felt like they were going to get another play. They didn't because time ran out, which obviously was going to run out. So maybe some confusion there on the situation. Maybe they thought they would have a timeout, but the twos went out pretty easily in that scenario. And then again, one of my favorite plays was with the ones. So on the first play, Jordan Love kind of fading away through in the back of the end zone, incomplete for Romeo Doubs. Basically, it was just a throwaway to see another down. And then on the next play, so I should mention on the first play, they kind of showed a double A gap blitz, showed pressure, and then backed out of it and kind of backed everyone up into coverage. On the very next play, they show blitz and everyone comes aggressively. And Jordan Love did a great job sitting back in shotgun, adjusting the protection as best he could to try to buy himself as much time as possible. And then just kept backpedaling back to the point where he could loft one up and found Tucker Kraft one-on-one with Evan Williams, and Tucker Kraft boxes Evan Williams out pretty easily and just plucks the ball out of the air. It wasn't like a Hail Mary or anything like that. He found Tucker Kraft, got it to him. Kraft boxed out Evan Williams, caught the touchdown for a win in that particular 2-minute drill. So really cool play there from Love to Tucker Kraft. And again, Love just understanding the assignment of backpedaling enough so he could buy just enough time for Kraft to get there. Now, it's an interesting situation for Evan Williams on that play. Might try to ask Matt LaFleur a little bit about it on Monday when we get the opportunity to meet with him. But the situation here, remember, in the backdrop of this is on what was it? Friday's practice, right? You had the situation where I think it was Love through to Dontavian Wicks over the middle, and Nate Hobbs came through Dontavian Wicks, broke up the play, was all excited, but Hobbs got talked to after that play about being too physical and too aggressive in that situation in a practice. Matt LaFleur was asked about it today as well, and he said, "Yeah, we don't want players playing through somebody. We want you knocking the ball away in practice, but we don't want you to go through the player." So Evan Williams in this situation is in a very interesting situation because he's, kind of behind Tucker Kraft, and Tucker Kraft's kind of, boxing him out on the play. I'm sure Evan Williams would like to go up and try to go through Tucker Kraft to some extent and break up that play. And even above and beyond that, you have to remember situationally, right? So there are 4 seconds left. The ball's on the 12-yard line. And if you as a defensive back, as Evan Williams, recognize that Tucker Kraft's getting ready to go up for a touchdown, you have to pass interfere on that play. No matter what, you can't allow a touchdown. If you need to pass interfere, so be it, because that is way better. You might say, well, they're going to get it first and goal on the 1. That's fine. Time is up. So you get one undowned play or one untimed play, but that's all they're going to get. So certainly, without question, a one-time undowned first and goal from the 1 is much better than giving up a touchdown. So even in that scenario, even if he, couldn't do anything to actually break up the pass legally in a game, you would teach him and say, hey, you take him down, you throw him to the ground, you tackle him, whatever it takes to just make sure that he doesn't catch that touchdown. Because again, you're down by 6. You don't want to give up that touchdown. There's no time left. And if he catches it, they're going to kick the extra point and win the game. So an interesting situation for Evan Williams, where I'm sure almost in like real time, he's going through in his mind of like, all right, I can't play through him. I can't pass interfere here because again, I'm going to get yelled at for being too aggressive. So like, what am I supposed to just like let him have the box out touchdown? It's just an interesting sort of rules of engagement sort of scenario there for Evan Williams. But the main point of this is that Love did a great job recognizing the blitz, buying time, throwing it up to Tucker Kraft. And I think in a game, even if Evan Williams, if he would have pass interfered, maybe could have got that thing so that it wasn't a touchdown. But without actually going to that extreme, I think Tucker Kraft would have come down with that touchdown pretty easily, even if it was a game situation. Love did have a interception earlier in the day. Little bit of pressure on him, and he is seeing a crosser over the middle, goes to throw that crosser, does not see Tyron Hopper chilling in his zone. Tyron Hopper picks off the pass easily, goes right to him. I would love to say that Tyron Hopper made this unbelievable play to range over and read Jordan Love's eyes and made this crazy intercept. Now he was pretty much just chilling in his zone. Love threw it right to him. He caught it, and that was pretty much the gist of the play from Tyron Hopper. Again, just one of those plays under pressure. You might say, oh, Jordan Love intercept. You do have to remember, and this is another one where, again, Matt LaFleur might say, hey, I want the practice habits to carry over. In a game, there's a real strong chance that Jordan, without having vision on the play, doesn't throw that ball. Whereas in a practice, it doesn't, you're not winning or losing a game or a championship on that particular play. Maybe he throws it in there, just tries to rifle it in. And if it's picked off, it's not really a big deal, right? So it's tough to say if he throws that ball in a game. But in this particular situation, in practice, he did throw it, and Tyron Hopper was pretty easily able to pick that off. Matthew Golden, couple touchdowns, a lot of red zone work today, by the way. So if you're looking for like deep ball plays or, some big explosives or things like that, not much opportunity, a lot of red zone work. And then even the 2-minute drill was a red zone situation. So today was very red zone oriented. But Matthew Golden had 2 touchdowns in red zone drills. The first one, when you talk about the hands of Matthew Golden, man, they have looked unbelievable so far in camp, where just he plucks the ball to the air. In baseball, you talk about, the sound off the bat, right? With Matthew Golden, there's like a sound when he just plucks the ball. It's just a very aesthetically pleasing, like ball hitting gloves and just sticking to it. And, just him again, plucking it out of the air. There's that special sound to it. And he just had one that was rifled in, throws his hands up, plucks it out of the air, and gets the touchdown on, I think, what was probably a slant play. And then a little bit later, Love does a great job of I shouldn't even necessarily say that. The offensive line does a great job of buying time for Jordan Love, who was able to stand in the pocket for a pretty significant period of time. Matthew Golden worked his way open, found a ton of separation. Love found him for a pretty easy touchdown in the back of the end zone as well. So a couple touchdowns. Matthew Golden did get a lot of work with the ones on this particular day. If you're looking for bad news, Trey Hill, the third string center, which doesn't, I know, mean a whole heck of a lot, but he's had a pretty brutal camp so far. So much so that like it wouldn't entirely shock me if there was like a center transaction where they picked up a new number 3 center and Trey Hill got the boot at this point. Trey Hill has had 3 snaps that have been errant that have got him benched on plays, 2 that were low. And then today he had one that was high. And just again, if you're a center, this is not one of those situations where Trey Hill is like a tackle trying to move to center, or a guard trying to move to center. Trey Hill has played center in the NFL. This is actually a player who has NFL experience. This is like a legitimate free agent signing. It's a vet minimum free agent signing, but he's like a legitimate player that has played in the league. And he has had a real tough time with some of those snaps. And again, has been benched on 3 different occasions for having errant snaps. I talked the other day, actually on today's show, as well as I think it was even the day before that, about Jayden Reed. And somebody asked me about it. I'm like, I haven't seen or heard anything from Jayden Reed at this point. And I honestly had to do like a double take. And I even did like a search to see, hey, have I tweeted anything about Jayden Reed? And so much so that I almost like got in my head of like, has Jayden Reed not been playing in like team activities? And I or just like none of us even noticed it, because I just haven't heard anything from him. I haven't seen anything from him. So I get to practice today and I'm talking to Paul Brettel and Mike Spofford. And I'm like, all right, this is probably a dumb question, but has Jayden Reed played team activities? And like Paul had to do like a double take too and couldn't remember. Spoff thought he remembered like an end around or a reverse to Jayden Reed. Either way, he was doing plenty of team activities today. So for whatever that's worth, it has been a unbelievably quiet start to training camp for Jayden Reed. Doesn't mean much of anything. And again, with the depth at wide receiver, it's just going to be that way from time to time, where some of these guys have a little bit of a disappearing act because there's just so many mouths to feed in that offense. But man, I don't remember Jayden Reed making a single noteworthy play now through 4 days of training camp. He did have one today where Jordan Love bought time, rolled to his left. Reed did a great job of kind of checking back and then getting a play down the line, or down the sidelines. And he, kind of popped open, and Love floated one out to him, hit him perfectly in stride. Reed made an unbelievable fingertip catch, but it was just ever so slightly out of bounds on the play. And it ends up being much ado about nothing, right? But it was a really impressive throw on the run, outside of, again, I guess the fact that it technically was out of bounds, and a really nice fingertip catch from Jayden Reed, but it was definitely incomplete. And again, I think for the most part, Jayden Reed extremely quiet through 4 days of camp so far. And last but not least, a couple really nice red zone runs by Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson. They were definitely in red zone trying to get the run game going in this particular practice. And I think just maybe throwing the defense off the scent a little bit, where you're trying to see, or you've usually been seeing a lot of throws and passes. And just in general, until pads come on, a lot of times you do see way more passing, just because the run game, it's really tough to gauge. And it's just a different animal when the pads come on. So usually don't see quite as much running, but on one particular play, that behemoth right side of Travis Glover at right guard and Kadeem Telford at right tackle opened up a really big crease for Emmanuel Wilson, who was able to get through for a 11 or 12 yard touchdown run in red zone on the play. And then Marshawn Lloyd a little bit later, they did a really impressive, just a halfback draw. Like, there's just a little delay. Lloyd gets the ball, the defense goes in pass defense, and then they transitioned obviously to that run play. And Lloyd was able to get in before the defense was able to make that full adjustment and, try to tackle him before he got in the end zone. So a couple nice touchdown runs in red zone by the offense as well. All right, those were kind of the key takeaways from today's practice. I'll again, obviously, of course, go tomorrow in much greater detail of all the plays, all the starters, the personnel, and everything like that. So we'll definitely get to that tomorrow. Looking forward to it. I will see you guys then, of course. But for now, I will get to as many questions as I possibly can before we get out of here. Look at Big B showing up. Big B says, have Kamal Hadden and Kalen King overall looked more confident so far? I feel like both have been making a play a day. It was great to see you the other day, Big B, by the way. A couple things. I thought Kamal Hadden had a really nice day today. He had a really nice pass breakup in practice in the red zone against, I think it was Romeo Dobbs, actually, of all people. And so there's this little play that Green Bay likes from Love to Dobbs that is in like the short corner of the end zone, and they run it extremely effectively. And Dobbs does a great job of selling it where it's going to go in a different direction. And then like as he's selling it, Love throws it. And then Dobbs kind of at the last moment cuts to the corner of that pile, or right at the front pylon, plucks the ball out of the air, and it's a pretty easy touchdown. I couldn't tell for sure if that's what they were doing on that particular play. But it's a play that were the location of the throw and the play would lead me to believe that that's probably what they were looking for. And Kamal Hadden was just all over it and broke up the pass. So good play from him today. And I thought he's had a really nice start to camp. I tweeted out, hey, if I had to put money on it today, I think Kamal Hadden is corner 4. And I think he is the leader in the clubhouse at the moment for that particular spot, and deservedly so through the start of training camp. And then as far as Kalen King goes, I personally cannot recall a particular or specific Kalen King play through the first few practices, but Matt LaFleur was pretty effusive in his praise of Kalen King in the press conference today, as Paul Brettel and I were talking about, and he brought up, he said, hey, basically, as far as, coach speak in a press conference goes, that's a pretty big compliment from Matt LaFleur with the words that he said about Kalen King and how great, I don't know if you used the word great, but how impressive he has been in the first 3 practices of training camp so far. So seemingly has been a good start for both of them. Again, I think Kamal Hadden might just be a little bit ahead, but there have been a lot of positive words about Kalen King, including from the defensive backs coach earlier in the offseason, and now, of course, from Ansley it was, and then now today from Matt LaFleur. So good start for both of those players by all accounts. Rick Harris says, is Isaiah Simmons starting week 1? Let's pump the brakes just a little bit. I think the answer is probably not. First and foremost, the main reason that Simmons is getting that opportunity and that playing time is because Quay Walker is out right now. If you are starting in nickel defense, Quay and Cooper will be out there. And in base, it'll be Quay, Cooper, and one other linebacker. Even that, I'm not saying your 4-3 defense is going to be your starting defense. Maybe it is on down 1 and you get lucky. But even if that's the case, like that's not their core defense, right? So their core starting defense is a nickel defense. And Simmons certainly would not be out there for the vast majority of those plays when Quay and Cooper are healthy. And then even if it is a 4-3 play, I would say that McDuffie probably still has a leg up over Simmons at the moment. And in more base defense, that's not exactly Simmons' forte quite as much. You kind of want him more on the passing downs and some of the just speed downs where he can utilize all that incredible speed at his disposal. So no, I don't think so. Unless there's injuries, then there maybe would be a chance at that. But either way, he's had a really great start to camp. I think you should be in general excited about what we've seen so far, but a long way to go for him. And, even the fact that he's in some of those conversations right now, and, players like Xavier McKinney are saying that he's off to a great start and that he's going to have a real opportunity to be in, or like that they're going to, he's going to have an impact on the defense and things like that. It's a really nice start for Isaiah Simmons, but I do not believe he'll be a starter week 1 again, unless there are actual injuries involved. Chicken Andy, I finally finished catching up on videos after like 2 weeks of absence, except for the after practice live streams. Catch me up on everything. I heard good things from my boy, Isaiah Simmons. Yeah, just talk about Simmons. Really nice start for him, but great episode for you today, Chicken, in which I recap all the things that you need to know from the first 3 training camp practices. So if you need a quicker recap, you can definitely go to that. And then, of course, we'll break down today's practice in full detail tomorrow. Could I please ask Justice this Wednesday to do a full recap on the NFLPA drama? I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit if we get the opportunity to. In general, players that sign in free agency, are they surprised at the culture or how well run the team is compared to other organizations? In my opinion, it's not talked about enough after several guys playing well there. It definitely does get mentioned from time to time. A couple things I'll just say here really quick. Number one, even when that stuff is said or there's positive things about Green Bay or the organization or things like that, I always take it just with a grain of salt, because I'm sure if they're asked the very same question in San Francisco or Detroit or even Cleveland or Houston or wherever they are, they're going to basically say the same thing no matter what. It's not like, some, new linebacker in Houston is going to be like, yeah, not really a fan of the culture here. And it doesn't seem like they're really caring about football. That you're going to get the same answer, whether it's in Green Bay or anywhere else. So I don't don't take a ton of stock in those particular conversations, or, what they're saying about the team in city and organization and things like that, because of course they're going to be glowingly positive. And then the other thing I'll say is, from a locker room standpoint, unfortunately, I don't get a ton of time in the locker room. So in training camp, how it works is you do Matt LaFleur, and then practice, and then after practice, locker room availability after they get back and actually get there. For me personally, the best thing that I can do to get you guys the training camp information and to, again, have numbers and viewership be the best, is to get that information to you guys as soon as practice is done. So as soon as practice is done, I'm in my car, I'm out of there, I'm heading home, taking that about 20, 25-minute drive home and getting here so I can talk to you guys about practice as quickly as possible, which means I don't get to do the locker room availability. In regular season, when that locker room availability is during practice, is so you have practice, and then practice is completely useless because you have stretch and then individual drills. And you basically get to take attendance, and that's the only thing that you get out of it whatsoever. There's nothing else that you get out of it. So you have that, and then you have to wait until practice is over. Then Matt talks, and then you get some locker room availability. For me to go all the way down and then do the beginning of practice, which is useless, chill and do nothing, or try to get work done on a laptop or whatever for that, hour and a half that practice is taking place, and then stick around and do all of that, is just super not conducive to actually being efficient with my time and trying to get, again, the best stuff out there in doing my research for the topics that I'm talking about and things like that. So it doesn't happen during the season. And then in post game, usually what happens again is they open locker room and there's the press conferences that take place at the same time. And I generally prefer to go to the press conferences more than locker room. So I actually don't get a ton of time in locker room for those reasons. So I'm sure that stuff does get talked about maybe a little bit more than what I am attuned to hearing, just because I don't get in there a whole heck of a lot. Chicken says Slater for the Chargers just signed a 4-year, 114 with 92 guaranteed. Tom's deal is looking insane. A, the sooner you can get those deals done, always the better, or somebody else is going to set the market pretty quick after that. And B, that Tom deal is going to continue to look better and better and better and better as time goes on. I think Green Bay, again, just did an unbelievable job. I'll just put it that way, of getting that deal done the way that they did. I've seen some 2-week-old hype on Javon Herring. Has he shown anything? There is no Javon Herring, so I don't know if the hype can't be that great if we don't have the name right. I'll just put it that way. Tyron Herring is a undrafted free agent corner that is on the team. I have not seen anything in particular. I think maybe yesterday he had, or Saturday or Friday, I should say. I think maybe he had a pass breakup in the threes or something like that. I think maybe I did fire off one Tyron Herring tweet, but outside of that one play, I haven't seen a whole heck of a lot. TJ says, you're good at this. I just want to thank you for doing this every day. You're doing great. Just want to tell you, TJ, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Andy, saw you on the ESPN show from Green Bay. When was that? That's really cool. I did not know that was a thing or how I got on there, but cool. I will take it, and happy I was on there. Andy was there today, and it was hot. High five Kraft, and he looked good. Expecting big things from him this season. It was insanely hot, 90 degrees and sunny out at Packers practice today. So it was a scorcher. I'm very much looking forward to cooling off after I'm done with this here. But yeah, definitely a hot one out there at practice today. I'm extremely confident in Jordan Love this year, Stephen. Part of that is vibes, hope, wishful thinking, whatever. I also just think he's a really good quarterback that was extremely limited last year because of all the injuries. I think the end of 2023 was more legit. I think he's going to settle into himself even more this season. And I think you're going to see a really impressive version of Jordan Love. I don't know if it's top 5. I don't know if it's top 10, but I think you're going to see a really impressive season. Couple hiccups here and there, some learning moments continue, but I think overall it's going to be a fantastic year for Jordan Love. Rick says, subscriber for 5+ years. First time I've caught a live stream. Thanks for all the content over the years. Go Pack Go. Rick, happy you were able to make it to a live stream. Thank you so much for being here. And more importantly, thanks so much for being a subscriber for the past 5+ years. R. Smith says, sounds like a catch-22. I'm trademarking that. Oh, catch-22. Gotcha. So for Matthew Golden, you're obviously talking about, is starting to stack some days together. Wrote some good things about Lloyd, really checking I'm assuming like checking the boxes are really clicking for these guys. Yeah, they're getting there. I think we're starting to see a little bit more consistency, especially from Matthew Golden. I'm not going to say that everything's slowing down for him, but you're starting to see that raw natural talent take over just a little bit more for Matthew Golden day in and day out here. That back foot throw is an important part of Jordan Love's kit. It very much is. The more tools you can have in your toolbox, the better. I still think, and like, listen, Aaron Rodgers still had moments in some of his final seasons, even to this day, that he didn't always make the right decisions at quarterback of knowing which club to pull out of your bag at the right moment. Sometimes he would not use the fundamentals when he was supposed to, or he would maybe, try to do a back shoulder, or a fadeaway, or sorry, not a back shoulder, a fadeaway or a sidearm throw when he probably just could have stood and delivered in the pocket. I think Jordan Love is still figuring out when to use the driver, when to use the putter, when to use the wood or the whatever. I'm not a golfer, if you can't tell, the 5-iron, when to use each club and in the right moment. You have to be able to have, even though you have all the clubs, that doesn't necessarily mean you should use each of them at any given moment. So I think that is still a work in progress, but the more, tools you have there, the better and more opportunity and options you have in those situations. And that fadeaway throw for Jordan Love is definitely one that he is very, very talented at. Thanks for your great coverage of training camp, Andy. Autumn, you are more than welcome. Thanks for being here. I don't think Evan really wants to contest against Kraft in that situation. Definitely not. In a game, my guess is Evan would be like all for it. I think he wants the smoke in that situation. Would say, I'll bat that thing out. Or even if I have to jump on his back and pass interfere, I'll do so, whatever it takes. So I think in a game, we would have seen a little bit of a different altercation there. Obviously I'm using altercation, freely, but a different result, maybe not even a result, but a different opportunity there for Evan Williams than what we saw in practice today. Well, yes, we do know that Evan can hit. Pack all the way this year, starting out 8-0. I'll take it, TJ. I'll take both of those things. Wonder if because Evan Williams wasn't allowed to go, he threw his way. It was why both squads did push-ups. I don't think so. One of two things. Either it was legitimately kind of like a tie between the offense and defense today, so they made both sides do push-ups, or Matt LaFleur just was not happy with the tempo, execution, attention to detail, something like that, and made both sides do push-ups. We'll, I'm sure, find out from Matt LaFleur tomorrow during his press conference. The D always has got to let up a lot early in the season. They've been fantastic so far. The defense have been fantastic. But if you're talking about like letting up so that you're not hitting your own players and things like that, yes, there is definitely a piece of that early on here, and just really throughout all of practice. Great zone coverage from the newcomer. So the Evan Williams, Tucker Kraft, trademarking that to play sounds more like a function of training camp decorum than legitimately getting beaten. Not that Tucker couldn't, but I don't count that. Yeah, I think it was still a really good play from Tucker and from Jordan Love. Again, I just think we would have seen a different Evan Williams in a game situation rather than maybe what happened on that particular play. Zobtob loves Matthew Golden. Not concerned about Reed, but it's noteworthy that a loud play involving him was because Rashan strong-armed robbed him. That aside, I'm really looking forward to his synergy with Golden. All right, Smith 30, I am very thankful that you brought up this play because I didn't think of it for my initial rundown today, but it was definitely one of the cooler plays of practice. So they're doing, I can't remember off the top of my head if it was an end around or if it was just like a little outside wide receiver screen. I think it was maybe the latter, but either way, Jaden Reed gets the ball in his hands, gets it along the sidelines, did a nice job of kind of navigating some mess, and then got along the sidelines. And as he's coming along the sidelines, if you're familiar with the original Jurassic Park, there is a play where they are in the car and there is a T-Rex behind them. And they look in the rear view mirror and the side mirror, and they see the T-Rex that's chasing them. So they're pushing the pedal to the floor to try to outrace in their vehicle this Tyrannosaurus Rex that's chasing them. And this T-Rex, this massive thing, is super fast and it's gaining on them and gaining on them. As I'm watching this play right in front of me, and I'm seeing right behind Jaden Reed, he didn't have the benefit of a rear view mirror, a side mirror to see what was happening. I'm seeing T-Rex Rashan Gary with this, huge, defensive end, 270, whatever he is, chasing from behind and making up the distance in a hurry. All of a sudden, Rashan Gary makes it there. Huge chop right on the ball, fumble. Thankfully for Jaden Reed, it goes out of bounds. But it's one of those plays where I mean, I'm telling you guys, like, you see this stuff, and we see it all the time. And you see these incredible athletes go out and on TV, and there's, certain plays that you can maybe get some appreciation for. Man, I'm telling you, when you see right in front of you, like between, like almost the distance between me and this, picture behind me, Rashan Gary sprinting at that size and that speed. I can't even imagine if I'm Jaden Reed and I get a glance behind me and that dude is chasing me down and gaining on me at that size. Like, it is a frightening scene to see somebody like that move the way that he does. And then with coming with the huge karate chop right on the ball. I mean, I don't even have anything bad to say about Jaden Reed on the play. Like, I don't even blame him. I don't know what he could have done. Like, I'm sure obviously, like, the 12 points of contact or whatever the hell it is. Like, yeah, for sure. Whatever. Hold on to that ball. But my goodness, it had far less to do with Jaden Reed and just seeing what like Rashan Gary can do in that situation. And like, I know that Rashan Gary maybe hasn't completely lived up to the high expectations that a lot of people have had for him based on draft status or contract or stuff like that. But man, again, you see some of these players in person and it is remarkable at just the level of athlete that they are. And that was an unbelievable play from Rashan Gary. All right. Thanks again for being the eyes and ears. I wish I could be there to see it myself. I am happy that I can be the eyes and ears for you. And it is my guiding principle of everything that I do, really covering the Packers, but certainly at training camp is I've been in everyone else's shoes with not being able to be at Packers practice every day, right? I know exactly what that feels like. I know exactly what I was missing out on when I didn't get to go to those practices. I knew exactly what I would have wanted, had I been there. And it's basically everything. I want somebody out there to basically be tweeting out or talking about everything that happened because I want every little juicy detail that I can possibly get my hands on, even if it's a random, Tyron Herring pass breakup or a Sean Clifford to, Messiah Swinson, I want to know everything. So if I see something and it's remotely noteworthy, you guys are getting it. And I'm, again, trying to be your eyes and ears as best as I can possibly be out there for you guys. McCole Hardman taking punts over Reed. That's not, yeah. I guess I didn't see the order, and I wouldn't read anything, by the way, even into that order, because sometimes it literally is as elementary or rudimentary as whoever just gets in line, right? Like they've got 5 or 6 guys that are going to that punt return line, and it's not like Rich Bisaccia is there being like, all right, Jaden, you're up first. Keyshawn, you're second. McColl's third. Whatever. Like those guys are just kind of getting in line and taking those punt return opportunities. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but I also think that McCole Hardman has a phenomenal chance to be the week 1 punt returner. 1 pack a day keeps the doctor away. Love that. Heck's going to have 12 picks this year. I think you might have that opportunity if teams actually continue to throw at him. We saw last year he was probably on pace for that, right? And then teams are just like, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We would prefer not to give the ball to the other team. So we're just simply not going to throw towards Xavier McKinney. We saw a lot more of that as the year went on. So teams are avoiding him at all costs at times. And because of that, I think those interceptions might be a little bit lower because, again, teams just aren't going to challenge him. This is the Green Bay Packers, mecca of football. Do we see any signs that Van Ness is going to take that leap everyone is hoping for? I feel like actually of all kind of the defensive ends, LVN has probably showed up as much or more than anyone else. Now everyone's going to get sick of me saying this. There's pretty much nothing you can glean from defensive line or offensive line play until tomorrow. Tomorrow we get pads on. In mini camp and OTA in the early days of training camp when no pads are on, it's really an impossibility to get a feel for those. There's too many rules of engagement where you can do what you can't do. And it's just not real. It's just absolutely not real. So we'll see. But LVN has come up with a couple plays. He beat Rasheed Walker today for a would-be sack on Jordan Love. He had a coverage sack the other day, and I think a 2-minute drill to end that 2-minute drill with a defensive win. And then I think had another sack in that practice, or I guess not yesterday, but 2 days ago as well. So he has come up with some plays. It doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, either good or bad from any of those guys at this point until the pads come on here. Chicken says there's a rumor that if the Browns struggle, that they'll kick the tires at Nick Saban. Browns are a joke. Yeah, let them go do that. Good luck with all of it. They're a very weird franchise. Player interviews are kind of overrated. I think there's some people that do a really great job on it. And there's certainly things that like, I learn because people do great interviews with the locker room, in the locker room and get some information out of it. So I think to some extent it can be sometimes, but I think people who are really good at it do get good nuggets of information. I think Paul Brettel, for example, does a phenomenal job of it and really, weaves, and some of the great writers for the Packers weave those quotes into their stories. And I think that is valuable as you're kind of reading those as well. So for me, quite frankly, and again, I think the biggest thing that I try to do with covering the team is kind of be myself and do the things that I enjoy about it, and can again continue to express my passion. For me, going into the locker room and asking the players a bunch of random questions, it's fine. I could probably glean a couple things here and there, but it doesn't change the stuff that I'm looking at, or how I'm viewing a player, how I'm viewing the team, or anything like that, or how I'm going to anticipate things moving forward. There's not much, if any, ROI for me kind of doing some of that stuff. But I do think there are some people that are very, very, very good at it and great at it. And it is helpful to kind of get that side of things as well. So the ones that are good at it, they do get very valuable information. And certainly I am able to use that from time to time, depending on what information we glean from those interviews. I like watching Stefanski lose in Browns down, though. Fair enough. Do you think we did enough at corner in case our pass rush doesn't improve and we need corners to cover longer? I love what I've seen out of Valentine, Nixon, and Hobbs so far. And I mean, love what I have seen. I have no concern. I mean, it's different in games. And, there's no Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's going to be moments for sure. All I can say is not only just based on expectations, but just how those corners are playing. I'm thrilled with what I've seen so far. Doesn't necessarily, again, become a complete harbinger of how they play come regular season, but certainly better than the alternative where they just look like hot garbage. So I'm very, very pleased with what I'm seeing from the starting corner so far. They are just in shorts and helmets currently. Have you had a chance to watch the D line and see where Kenny Clark has been working on the line? Just normal defensive tackle spot. So I just think we're to the point, by the way, where in a 4-man line, you've got 2 defensive tackles. And yes, where they line up matters a little bit, but there's not going to be a true nose tackle in this defense. Like, it's not going to be, Kenny Clark or Warren Brinson. I guess if Stackhouse is out there, if he eventually earns a spot, that might be different. But these guys are all in the very similar weight classes when it comes to defensive tackle outside of Nasir Stackhouse. So if you've got Clark and White, or Clark and Brooks, or Clark and Wooden, or Wooden and whatever, like any 2 of those guys out there, they're interchangeable. So just normal defensive tackle spot. And again, those guys are now a lot more interchangeable inside on the interior. Musgrave's been fine. Nothing crazy noteworthy. Again, some of the stuff that you see now, he looks a lot more comfortable after the catch and just being able to use, again, some of that speed and talent at his advantage. They tried hitting him on a seam play today, but it was perfect coverage by McDuffie and McKinney on the play. Love also threw it a little bit high, but no major takeaways from Musgrave thus far. Do you think the Packers will edge out the Lions to win the North this year? Hope so. Absolutely hope so. We'll learn a lot in week 1 and obviously as the season goes along, but I think those 2 are very talented, fun football teams, and it's going to be an epic matchup week 1 to see who gets the early advantage in the NFC North. Got to say, I'm really liking the energy surrounding Simmons. I don't want to minimize what McDuffie provides, but I think Simmons might have a higher ceiling, greater utility. Just depends on what you want. And I think McDuffie's having a nice start to camp as well. McDuffie is Mr. Consistency. Like, if you draw up a play and say, this is how we want it run, McDuffie's going to run it almost to a T the way that you want it run. Like, if you're doing like a teaching tape of like what linebacker play should look like and how you want to scrape and how you want to take on a block and how you want to do, Isaiah McDuffie is a great person to watch. He's doing it's hard almost to say like, hey, we don't want you out there. Or you're not where, if you're coaching him to do it a certain way, and McDuffie is doing it almost to a T, exactly what you want. Now, he doesn't have the high-end height, weight, speed, or athletic profile or things like that, but he makes up for it in IQ, smarts, and he's very quick as well. So I think McDuffie's off to a great start. I think in more of a base defense in 4-3, 3 guys out there, I do think McDuffie makes a little bit more sense than Simmons. We'll see how that battle kind of plays out. But in a nickel situation where you need somebody to come in for a Cooper or a Quay, then I think in that situation, Simmons probably makes just a little bit more sense and maybe does have a little bit of that higher ceiling. Hopper is where he's supposed to be, then he did his job. Yes. I will always say this, and as I'm going through and grading games, there is very much a difference if, whether again, if you're in man or zone, but if you're in zone and you're just chilling in your zone, meaning you didn't move, right? You drop, you get to your drop, you sit there, and then you're just staying there. There's no inherent thing that you've done to like get to your spot or read the quarterback or anything like that. You just went to the zone that you were assigned to get to. And yes, you did your job, but you didn't do anything. Like, not this is not minimizing anything, but Goofy, you or I or anyone could have followed that to a T. We all could have got to that spot in the zone, sat there and waited. Now, great that he picked off the pass, great that he was in his zone, but there wasn't anything noteworthy about that play from Tyron Hopper. I mean, catching the ball is important, right? But this is definitely one of those where you, me, pretty much anyone given that same assignment on that same play should have come down with that interception from Jordan Love. So it's a nice play from Hopper. It's going to show. It's going to get some people excited. But if I'm grading that play, I'm giving Hopper a positive, but it's a pretty small one because again he didn't do anything to make that play. It was more of a negative from Jordan that it would be a positive from Hopper if you can kind of view it that way. Bruce City Bob wants to talk more about Tyron Hopper. Special teamer, no doubt, but do you think he breaks into the linebacker rotation? He would seem to be at number 5 right now. Quay, Cooper, and then McDuffie, Simmons, and then Hopper after that. So he's going to make the team. I'd be pretty stunned if he didn't. I have seen steps. I do think he looks quick. Again, came up with the interception today. He does get some rotational snaps with the one, so he is getting some opportunity there. I do think he looks better than where he was at a year ago. But right now, core special teamer who is probably number 5 at the depth chart, ahead of Christian Welch and Jamon Johnson, but behind the top 4 linebackers on the team. Ben is predicting that Dontavian Wicks will have a breakout year just like Devontae had in his 3rd year. That would be incredible and amazing, and I think we would all be very excited about that if that came to fruition. It's been a minute since we've had a rookie wide receiver blow up week 1 and go off for the year. Last one I think of was Chase. From 1 to 10, what's the chance that M22 explodes and goes off week 1 and on beyond that? I think he can have a major impact on this team this year. And I think if you told me he had a 6 catch, 100-yard touchdown performance in week 1 against Detroit, would totally believe it legitimately. I'm not betting on any of these wide receivers to have massive years because you have so many damn wide receivers, plus tight ends, plus Josh Jacobs, plus whatever. So I'm not betting on huge statistical seasons for anybody outside of maybe, again, Jordan and Josh Jacobs, because I just think, again, there's going to be so much that, you want to spread the ball around to all of these different pieces within the offense, and it's going to be very difficult. So I think you could have a really nice season, a very impactful season, a very efficient season. I could see him having a great week 1 against Detroit, but if you're looking for a 75 catch, 1,400 yard, 8 touchdown season for Matthew Golden, I don't think I'm predicting that from any receiver on the team, much less a rookie. So I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit statistically, but I do think he can have a really impactful year for Green Bay this year. How have the guys who were in the doghouse last year, Musgrave, Wicks, Van Ness, looked in comparison so far this year? I wouldn't say Musgrave was ever in the doghouse. I think he was just banged up. Wicks and Van Ness have had nice starts to camp and certainly are not in any doghouse or anything like that to start 2025. How is it even possible that cheeseheads believe that they can win the NFC North? The Vikings, Lions are way, way better teams. I would give the nod to Detroit at the moment, AW. I would certainly take Green Bay over Minnesota. And if we're looking at it, the NFC North at the moment is Lions plus 145 to win the division, Green Bay plus 250, Vikings plus 350, Bears plus 450. So to say that cheeseheads or Packers fans are ignorant because they think that they can be better than the Vikings is pretty ignorant actually on your end, when literally Vegas has them as a plus 100 better odds than the Minnesota Vikings, with Green Bay at plus 250 and the Vikings at 350. I actually like the Vikings roster a lot. I think they're going to be extremely competitive. I actually really like JJ McCarthy. When you've got a first-year quarterback, that is a massive, massive variable that you have at the position. Could be great, could be terrible, could be anything in between, but that is a massive variable when you're prognosticating these sort of things. So yes, I believe that Green Bay has a real legitimate chance to win the NFC North. I do think Detroit is going to take a slight step back. I do think Green Bay is going to take at least a slight step forward. And I do think they have a real opportunity and right to win the NFC North. But if I were betting today, I would have them as second best odds to win the NFC North, but absolutely within the realm of reality. And it's not like, by the way, plus 250 is this insane long shot odds. The New York Giants are plus 3,000 to win the NFC East. The Browns are plus 3,000 to win the NFC or the AFC North. The Raiders are plus 1,500. The Saints are plus 1,100. The Packers are at plus 250. They are very much, by the way, the Washington Commanders, the Commanders are plus 225, and people love the Commanders. So this is not some crazy long shot odds for Green Bay. They are very much in that discussion and conversation. Here late, so you might have said, but how have Bullard and Coop looked today? Nothing out of Bullard today, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And again, these are one of those things where 80 guys out there, you're trying to catch as much as possible, but nothing noteworthy from Bullard today. Cooper had one of those normal plays where Josh Jacobs took a toss play and Cooper just did his warp speed thing through the line of scrimmage and shot into the backfield. I couldn't tell if he had the angle on Jacobs. Jacobs did cut it back. Could have easily either been a 5-yard loss, or not 5-yard, but probably like a 3-yard loss on the play with Cooper making it. Or it's possible that Cooper maybe overran it a little bit and Jacobs was able to get the cutback. I couldn't tell for sure. But either way, just that pure unmitigated speed from Edgerrin Cooper is always something to, just behold, because it is just different and special. Packers are going to smoke the Vikings this year per Ed. That'd be great. Seems like the defense always wins in training camp for the Packers, even with Rodgers early on. Yes. Defense is ahead of offense is a tradition like any other, tale as old as time, whatever you want to view it. But early on in camp, defenses usually do have that advantage. The T-Rex reference should get you 50,000 more subs alone. Nice. You are welcome for that, R.R. Smith. Have you seen an improvement with Love's footwork and not throwing off his back foot and underthrowing the ball? Ben, it's a great question and something I probably should spend a little bit more time keeping an eye on. I've talked about this before, but if I try to, hone in on one particular thing, a lot of times what happens is I'm just missing 5 to 10 other things. So I usually let the play kind of take care of itself and then, try to make as many observations as I can throughout the course of that play. But it's something I'll try to do a little bit better job of, is kind of keeping an eye on that footwork moving forward. I think it'd be really fun. Vandy's asking about a trade for Trey Hendrickson. I think it would be very fun. There would be some long-term ramifications. I think giving up a premium pick plus a contract that is akin to TJ Watt's new contract is going to be extremely problematic, and I think is something that Green Bay will probably not entertain whatsoever, but it would certainly be a lot of fun. I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't be against it, but I can 1 billion% understand why they would not go in that direction. That's a major cost, and not something that I think Goody is more likely to do. But as I've said all along, if later today they make a trade for Trey Hendrickson and we get to talk about that tomorrow, there will be a massive smile on my face, and I'm going to care very little about whatever second round pick and contract they give up, because Trey Hendrickson would be a Green Bay Packer, and man, how fun would that be? But I would not hold your breath very, very long on that actually happening, Vandy. Sam Darnold was all the Vikes needed to sweep the Packers. Sure. All right. Good luck. How are the defensive rookies outside of Sorrell look so far? So it's tough, right? Because Colin Oliver has not played yet. Sorrell's looked good. Brinson, again, it's interior defensive line, so nothing to take away from that so far. And Micah Robinson, his noteworthy play so far has been getting cooked on a double move and pass interfering on the play to make sure that he didn't give up an even bigger play on it. So no major takeaways yet, but again, once Colin Oliver gets back, hopefully, and once we see the pass come on, we should get maybe a little bit better feel for Sorrell, Oliver, Brinson, etc. And we'll kind of keep an eye on Micah Robinson, of course, as well. Know what I'm about to say might seem obvious, but it's very nice to talk about a sophomore 4th rounder and Evan Williams as a legit plus starter and not think about it twice. Hell of a pick by Goody. Yeah, he's been really impressive so far, and I think he's even going to be better in year 2. Teams quit throwing deep with X back there. They did. It's a cheat code for Green Bay because teams do not want to throw at Xavier McKinney, which makes teams predictable, and it makes it so that you can use Xavier McKinney in a lot of really strategical ways. So it's a very big upside for Green Bay, the fact that they can put him back there. Love from the biggest cheesehead out of Iraq, Andy Hassan. That's awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Andy. What do you think about the Packers' odds to make the playoffs being even? I think it probably is a lot more to do with the NFC in general and the strength of schedule in the NFC North. It would be a massively disappointing year if Green Bay did not make the playoffs. I do think they will. I do think it's a ridiculously difficult schedule. And I do think there's fair questions about Green Bay based on these past couple of years. We've talked about it. If you're really looking to be negative about it, you can look at Green Bay the past couple of years and say, ever since those wins against Detroit and KC, which were really big wins in 23, but ever since that time, they've been basically bad team merchants. They've beat up on bad teams, and against good teams, especially last year, they no-showed. Nah, that's aggressive. They didn't no-show, but they couldn't win. They went 0-6 in big games last year. They've got a crap ton, at least on paper, of big games this year. And if they no-show or don't, win those games, it's going to be very, very difficult to make the playoffs. So I think that's why there's a legitimately fair question about Green Bay. Is it's up to the Packers, this young team, to show that they have learned from their mistakes and they can go into tough environments or play big time teams and actually come away with wins. So that's the onus on Green Bay. Tough schedule, tough division, tough conference. And again, they need to go out and show that they can beat the best teams in the league. We'll get a much better feel, I think, after those first couple games against Detroit and Washington of exactly where this team stands. Packers can make a wild card with 8 to 9 wins, third in the North. I would be stunned if they could make the playoffs with 8 wins. I think there'll be a ton of competition, and I think there'll be tiebreakers in play at 9 wins. You want to get in the playoffs, you better at least win 10 in a 17-game season. Do you think it's a make or break year for Musgrave? Yes, to some extent. Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. He's going to get an opportunity again in year 4, no matter what. He'll have a cheap enough contract, and he's super talented that even if he has a pretty nondescript year this year, he'll get a chance for Green Bay next year. And we have seen multiple tight ends that it's almost better to pick those guys up when they go into their second contract sometimes than picking them up as rookies, because we do see a hefty transition from college to the NFL for tight ends. So I could see a world in which it's, year 5 where Luke Musgrave has that breakout. But if he really wants to be a massive player in this offense and get more opportunity and play well and be somebody that gets a big second contract somewhere, the next year and a half are going to be massively important for Luke Musgrave. No question about it. I think we've had enough of AW today. We can ignore his messages from now on. If the Cowboys call and say they want 2 firsts and 2/3 for Parsons and he wants a 3-year, $124 million deal, do you say yes? Definitely would be throwing everything in the pot. 2 firsts, 2/3, 3 years, 124. So what, a 40? Wait, that 41 can't be right. What did TJ Watt get? So he got what, 3 years, 123? Yeah. So to me, it's going to take 3 years, 150 for Parsons. I think he gets 50 mil per year. So let's just say it's 3 years, 150 on an extension. I talked about this a little bit the other day, Chicken, and I know you missed some of the live ones. If Micah Parsons becomes available, 31 teams should be gathering together to have conversations of how to acquire him and what they're willing to give up. Well, we can make this quick, Chicken, in the fact that, would I pursue it? Yes. Would I be probably willing to do something like that? I think so. I think he's an unbelievable fit, prime of his career, a top 5 defensive player in the league. I'd be willing to take a chance at that for a Micah Parsons, even if the cost is exorbitant. I think that could be the difference between being a good team and a real true Super Bowl winner. I really do believe that. Not going to happen. Dallas will figure something out. And let's just put it this way. If Micah Parsons becomes available and there is a 31 team bidding war, do you really think the Packers are going to be the one that comes out on top, offering the most of any other team? You are insane if you think that's ultimately the case. Would be, entertaining if I were wrong and Micah Parsons ends up a Green Bay Packer, but I'll believe that when I see it. And I think it's probably much ado about nothing. And again, it would be glad to be wrong if it ends up being the case. Vikings will fall on their faces this year, same as they've always do. One good regular season, then back to being crap. I think the Vikings will be good this year. I think they'll probably split with Green Bay in the season series. I'm not the Vikings thing in what we've seen from them over eternity is I think they can legitimately be a really good regular season team this year. But again, it's not somebody that I'm even remotely concerned about actually winning a Super Bowl in 2025. Larry McCarron is really good at interviewing. He sure is. Green Bay fans are very lucky to have him on Packers.com covering the team. McDuffie has experience wearing the green dot. Absolutely. Been to 2 to 4 practices and have been pleasantly surprised by the secondary. Even Micah Robinson has looked the part. Hope they keep it up. Yeah, the secondaries look great so far. Really, really impressive. Know this is difficult to do and you can't control people, but I feel as if pro teams like the Chiefs and Browns who keep getting in legal trouble should be investigated in some way and why they allow that. Here's my take on this, chicken, and I've been saying this for some time. I think that teams need to stop getting an additional player for suspended players. That fixes things very quick. You should not be able to suspend a player for 4 games and then be able to call up another player because of that. If you've got a player on your suspend list, that's one of your 53 spots. That absolutely should be one of your 53 spots. I don't care that what they're suspended for or how they're suspended or whatever. You should not get to suspend a player for 8 games and then bring another player onto the 53 while they're suspended. That would change the calculus a lot on if you want to keep those players on your team, on if you want to acquire those players in the first place. That to me, if you've got 4 guys that are suspended on your team, your roster is at 49 players. Good luck. You know, if you've got a Rashee Rice suspended for the year, you now have to decide if you want to keep him on one of those 53-man roster spots suspended for the year that you just don't even get anymore, or if you want to release him and pick up a different player because he got suspended for the entirety of the year. That is what the change needs to be made, in my opinion. I don't fault teams for giving players a second chance, depending on the situation and what the obvious issue is or whatever. But I do think sometimes players are, and people in general, are deserving of second chances. And I think sometimes you're doing a huge disservice to players by taking away the thing that might actually keep them out of trouble and being a part of the team and giving them that opportunity to maybe reshape and get their life back in order. That's another story for another day. And again, I'm not saying all situations are created equally. Some people deserve to be suspended for the entirety of their careers, but we don't need to get into all of that today. But to me, the way that you fix this is a suspended player should still count towards your 53 and not be given a roster exemption to be able to pick up more players. That will change things very fast with what you are willing to accept when it comes to crappy people or crappy players that are taking up roster spots because they do something stupid. Problem solved, in my opinion. Chicken is forcing you to talk about the Browns. It's delusional. AW, you have had way worse takes and or conversation and or questions and anything else than that today. So we can easily talk about that right there. Has the last week made you feel a bit better about the depth of the defensive back room? Depth, maybe not so much. I mean, we already knew the the depth of the safety room was good. So I didn't have any concern there. And that's been as advertised. I've liked Kamal Haddon for a while now, and I do think Javon Bullard has the ability to play a little bit in that slot as well. So I was a little bit less concerned, I think, going in about maybe the top 4. The questions after that, the Kalen Kings, the Bo Meltons, the Micah Robinsons, and anyone after that, I still think it's a fair question. I still personally would like one more person in that secondary that I just had a little bit more proof of concept of. But outside of that, I think they've had a really nice start to the off-season, the training camp, etc., and think that they're in a pretty good place right now for what they can be moving forward. I'll tell you what, I do like McDuffie better as a middle linebacker and the idea of Quay as an off-ball and base. And the more I say it out loud, the more I like it. There's definitely some things that you can do there. That's for sure. But again, talking even about base defense is, what they're going to use it maybe 10% of the time or give or take, probably 3%. But yeah, sure. You can do that. You can put McDuffie, Quay wherever you want them. Either way, it's probably not going to change your win totals on the season one way or the other. Afternoon, Andy and everyone. Thank you for your work. Go Pack Go. Appreciate you. And thanks so much for being here. Lions will miss the playoffs. That's a hot take, Mike McGee. That'd be a pretty big downfall for them. It's probably going to take a Jared Goff injury or something like that for them not to make the playoffs. Simmons, I like situationally. If Quay can go, then I think McDuffie is the next man up. I just like that they have options. I think that's the big thing. They have options. They have different ways to utilize those players. They're different ingredients. They're different flavors of players. And I think that's a good thing for Jeff Hafley to have. Love has thrown into the center of the field for interceptions a few times now. 23 was definitely worse. 24, I didn't feel like it was quite as much of an issue for him. And again, I'm not going to read too much into one practice throw over the middle that got picked off today, but it definitely was a little bit more of an issue in 23, but I don't have a concern over it moving forward until he gives me a reason to feel concerned about it moving forward. That Tom contract looks beautiful compared to Slater. Go Pack, go and bolt up. Yep, we definitely talked about that a little bit earlier. What are your thoughts on how Elton Jenkins will resolve? I don't know how it resolves. I do believe it does get resolved. I'm still hopeful that in the next few weeks we might see Elton out there, but no news at the moment. And as of today, Elton's still not out there practicing. Lions interior offensive line is questionable, and Goff isn't exactly Mr. Mobility. I do think it's a fair question. I did like Ratledge coming out of college. I did like Mahogany coming out the year prior, and I do think he can be a solid guard, but it's not quite the Zeitler and Ragnow experience that they've had, at least going back to last year. So definitely going to be different. And those young players stepping up on the interior, whether they do or do not, is going to, I think, be a major talking point for that interior of the Lions offensive line this upcoming year. Let's see. Found a Mark Murphy Packers card. Just to be clear, for those of you who don't know, Mark Murphy, the safety for the Packers, is not Mark Murphy, the former president and CEO for the Packers. Mark Murphy, the president and CEO, did play in the NFL, primarily for Washington. He did play in the NFL, but he did not play for the Packers. Just happenstance that there was a Mark Murphy safety for the Packers who, obviously had a really nice career in Green Bay. And then a Mark Murphy defensive back for Washington who went on to become the Mark Murphy who was president and CEO. So if you see a Mark Murphy Packers player football card, that is a thing that exists, but it is not the president and CEO Mark Murphy. Colin Oliver not getting on the field yet is breaking my heart. I really want to see him to R. Smith, but it's one of those things that unfortunately we're just going to have to be a little bit patient with. Who has surprised you, good or bad, most through the limited practices so far? Nate Hobbs has been the really fun, surprising player with just how good he has been through the start of camp. And I'll just say Jaden Reed, just not having any sort of impact through 4 days so far has been the other surprise, I guess, on the opposite side. Not willing to crown Nate Hobbs, not really worried at all remotely about Jaden Reed. But if you're just grading 4 days of practice and saying who's been the biggest pleasant surprise, I would say, Isaiah Simmons or Nate Hobbs on the plus side. Probably Jaden Reed a little bit on the, again, not even negative side, but just been very, very quiet. If you think Green Bay would bring Rasul back, no, I do not think that they will bring Rasul back. I do not think they should bring Rasul back. If there were an injury at corner, I do think that's maybe a little bit of a different situation. But for now, really no interest, no desire. He had a really bad year in Buffalo this past year. Even if the Packers aren't as good as they think they are, I would be shocked if they do as bad in big games in division games as they did this past year. They're going to be better. I'd be pretty surprised if they weren't, but it's a big season. That's why they play the games, and that's what's going to make it a very interesting year for Green Bay. Lance says, I am from La Crosse and live in St. Paul now. I tell all my Viking cousins that Love has the biggest upside because of his arm talent. I love this division when it comes to quarterbacks. I think it is going to be a tremendously juicy, interesting, and entertaining year as we get to the end of it and try to figure out, how do you rank these quarterbacks between Goff, Love, Caleb Williams, and JJ McCarthy? I say this sincerely. I think any of the four 2 years from now could be the best quarterback in the division. And I think any of the four 2 years from now could be the worst quarterback in the division, or maybe not even in the division. So I guess that would be more of like a Caleb Williams or JJ McCarthy situation, but you get my point. I'm so interested and intrigued. There's a ton of talent. I think we know Goff has the highest floor, know exactly what he is. And now it's just, can he get his team over the hump and actually winning, a championship? Hopefully not. But that's the big question for him. But he's been fantastic the last couple of seasons. Jordan, we saw these unbelievable flashes from. The best Jordan has been the best of any of these quarterbacks in the division so far, but hasn't been consistent with it, was injured all last year. And there's still some general question of what does like the average normal Jordan Love look like? And then McCarthy, top 10 draft pick, who has a ton of upside, is going to get his first opportunity. And of course, Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick, who got his first opportunity last year in a pretty disastrous situation, was pretty terrible, not terrible, but was not good. And now there's major questions as to what he can be in Ben Johnson's offense in year 2. I think it's a very interesting and juicy division when it comes to quarterback play. How has LaFleur's training camp changed over the years? Have you noticed urgency that Goot said was needed? I do think, especially on the defensive side, this team seems very hungry. I'm excited about that. As far as changes, you just see, just again, I think even more taking care of the players, less competitive periods and things like that. in an effort, I think, to make sure that you're limiting injuries. That's not a LaFleur thing. That's a league wide thing for the most part, but definitely a different, just definitely a little bit different than where it was when LaFleur first came in the league. I'm telling you, and trust me on this, 30% of the time I'm right 100% of the time. Oliver's speed on the field is at the same as Cooper will be. The story, you heard it from me first. I think that's probably a little bit over aggressive, R. Smith, but I am interested and intrigued to see Colin Oliver out there. Edge contracts are getting up to quarterback numbers. You know, it's the number one thing that you want is a quarterback. The number two thing that you want is somebody that can affect the quarterback, right? So you want the great quarterback on offense, and then the biggest thing that you can have on defense is somebody that's constantly rattling the quarterback, you know, hitting the quarterback, making them get the ball out quicker, pressuring them, sacking them, etc. So top contract is going to be quarterback. The second best thing is the things that affect quarterback: offensive line, defensive end. Those are the ones that are going to be next up on that list. So defensive end, pass rusher, definitely very high on the list. All right. Can I please say hi to Athena? Hello, Athena. Hope you are doing well. Andy, have the safeties practice a configuration without McKinney? He's definitely had some plays off here and there, just again to limit wear and tear more than anything. But they have not practiced a package without Xavier McKinney, because such package would never exist unless there was actually an injury to McKinney in some capacity, which hopefully does not happen. I know you love percents. What do you think the percentage chances that Watson gets his second contract in Green Bay? I think it's pretty 50-50 at the moment. I've talked about this before, but I think if he's amazing, he probably prices himself out of Green Bay. I think if he's terrible coming back, Green Bay probably just goes in a different direction. I think if he just looks good, but he doesn't get that huge contract offer from another team, I think you could figure out a compromise that makes sense for both sides between Watson and Green Bay. Isaiah Simmons and Edgerrin Cooper on the field together would be unstoppable. I just want to call timeout here for a second. The Isaiah Simmons defensive experience through, 5 years, 6 years in this league so far, 5 years, 4 years, whatever it's been, has not been good. Okay. It's been fine at times. There have been moments, there have been flashes, but the general rule of thumb is that Isaiah Simmons on the field is usually a net negative for you on defense. I love how he looks so far. I'm excited for him. I think they found a value here. I think Jeff Hafley is going to find ways to utilize him. I promise you, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket or rain on your parade, but just know that there's always these players that we get excited about because they're new and enticing. But just remember, the Isaiah Simmons experience defensively has not been one of great success, which is why he's on his third team already as a former top 10 pick. So just be careful. The second thing is we also tend to get overexcited about really fast players. And it's really great to have speed. And Edgerrin Cooper looks like he's going to be a stud. But there's so much more to it than just being able to be fast out on the field. I do think that there are some fun things that you could do with Edgerrin Cooper and Isaiah Simmons together on the field. I do believe at some time this year, we will see Edgerrin Cooper and Isaiah Simmons on the field together, but there is a lot more to it than just being fast. You have to be able to go out and play the game the right way, take on blocks, take good angles, understand your assignment, all of those sort of things. And so their upside and talent is very enticing. I understand that. I love it as well. I see, or at least in the past have seen the game the exact same way of like, we all play Madden, right? We want those, those speediest guys at every position that we can possibly have them on, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. And while there could be plays and situational opportunities to get those guys on the field together and playing, I do think you just have to recognize and understand that it's not quite that easy. Otherwise, you just play two corners at inside linebacker together. So a little bit more that goes into it than that. Once they get padded up and you see the trenches, what's the first thing you're looking for? Just kind of who is winning the trenches, quite frankly. I want to see how Aaron Banks looks once he's out there. I want to try to keep an eye on Anthony Belton a little bit, Jordan Morgan, some of the young defensive tackles, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Nasir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, Barron Sorrell on the edge. So I just want to see who's actually getting pressure. Is that defensive line taking that step in the right direction? What is is the offensive line able to convert some of those short yardage situations? Just a little bit more of that sort of stuff as we get into the padded practices. We should name Bullard slot corner and keep Zane Anderson safety. Zane is the better safety. I disagree with that. Probably. I think Bullard is the better safety of the two. In fact, I think Katano Ladapo is also better at safety than Zane Anderson. I don't think there's any reason to change Javon Bullard to a corner. He's going to play in the slot. He's going to get some opportunity at safety as well. But I think Javon Bullard, again, to this day so far, is still way underrated for what people think of him. I think he can be a very good safety. He's shown better as a slot corner so far this offseason. I think he's going to be a really good player for Green Bay this year. And I think he'll start hopefully getting a little bit more credit. Simmons has to prove that he can stand up against the run game. Cooper as well, to an extent. Getting washed out by guards isn't unstoppable. Again, that's what we're kind of talking about, obviously, is the run stuff matters. Cooper usually finds a way to, morph his way around, offensive linemen without sometimes taking them on. So he's a little bit of an exception, but, and Simmons isn't really meant to be a rundown linebacker. That's not really his particular role. So just depends on how you want to utilize them, how you use them, etc. But I do think that there are ways to utilize Isaiah Simmons this year, and I'm excited to see how they do that. Talked about the significance of the Myers swap for the Packers as a big step forward. I'm thinking it will be interesting to watch that against the Lions swap as a litmus test. So yeah, I think if Green Bay can make that upgrade from Myers to Aaron Banks, and Detroit makes that downgrade from Zeitler and Ragnow to, whether it's Ratledge or whether it's Mahogany or Glasgow, those guys on the interior, I do think that can be a downgrade for them. And I do think that could have an effect not only on Jared Goff, but the running game as well in Detroit. Giving 4 high draft picks plus overpaying for one defensive player doesn't make sense. Our pass rushers are not that much worse than anyone available to make a trade like that. Makes sense. What I will say, Michael, in general, I do agree with you. I do think what you have to be cognizant of nowadays is that there are, a few players on each team that are real, true, game-changing difference makers. And it's very hard to find those players and acquire those players. A lot of those players are top 10 draft picks. And if you're not picking in the top 10, you don't have the opportunity, sometimes even top 5, you don't have the ability to acquire those players. And we now see, especially with, I think, the trend that's going to continue, I think you are going to see fewer and fewer and fewer Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber players ever reach free agency where they become available easily like that. I think the Saquon Barkley, Xavier McKinney free agency might be one of the last times in a while where we see big-time players come available. Now, you might see a DK Metcalf switch teams, and that's not even like an upper echelon wide receiver, right? But that takes a second-round pick and a massive contract for DK Metcalf. If you want to acquire a player like that, one of the very few rare Infinity Stone type players in the NFL, you're going to have to give a crap ton to acquire that player. And I do think if you end up in a situation like Green Bay, where you've got a really good team, but you're maybe missing a few of those, again, kind of like Infinity Stone type players that you need to collect to really be a championship team, at some point, 2 first-round draft picks that you're trading that are the 28th and 26th overall picks and 2 third-rounders. I get you could spend the biggest free agent. Do you know who the biggest free agent signing was this past year? The player who got the most money, more than any other free agent in the market? Milton Williams. That was the biggest free agent signing this offseason monetarily. That we might be now in an era, and Justice and I have talked about this, where the best free agents that you can sign are Milton Williams. Really good players that are showing signs of upside, are still young, but has Milton even made a Pro Bowl? I don't think so. Milton Williams, let's go to our Pro Football Reference here. No Pro Bowl, no All-Pro. That was the biggest free agent signing this year. So those players are, I really truly believe, no longer going to come available in free agency. And again, a lot of times, unless you're finding a diamond in the rough, which are tough to find, or picking in the top 10, getting those premium players, extremely difficult to do. So you at some point have to make the call of, yeah, I love having free agent money to spend. I love having first and third round picks. I get it. But if I can never go out and get one of those real difference makers, I do have to figure out, like, hey, I need them. I need a couple of difference makers. How do I go about acquiring them? And sometimes you have to be a little bit bold and be aggressive. Am I advocating for Green Bay to do something like that? Not necessarily. Do I think Green Bay will do something like that? Absolutely not. But you do have to be cognizant that those players are insanely difficult to find. And when you have the opportunity to acquire one, you have to at least have the conversation about it and decide how aggressive that you want to be in doing so, because the opportunities to acquire them are exceedingly rare, if that makes sense. The Hendrickson hype needs to go away. Not going to happen, nor should it. It definitely will not happen. Should is a more interesting conversation, but it's not going to happen. Would love to be wrong, depending on the cost. Two things hurt the Packers in division games: slow starts and failure to convert on third and short. What will you need to see in camp to believe they can be better in those areas? Nothing. There's nothing that I can see in camp to know. That's going to be one that we just have to see in games. And that's just the case for certain things. Like, camp can show you some players who are trending in the right way and things like that. But overarching themes is the pressure. The pressure looked great in camp last year. John Harbaugh in joint practices, after that joint practice, was raving about the Packers front and how disruptive they were and that they couldn't do anything because they kept being so disruptive. The Ravens were fine on offense. They were one of the best offenses in football, and Green Bay's pass rush was not as advertised. So there's literally nothing, and it's just going to have to be something that we see once the season starts. Why not extend Watson before he becomes a free agent? Well, there's a variety of different things. One, it takes two to tango. Watson has to accept the deal. You can't just say, hey, we want you back for, 2 years, $12 million. And he's like, all right. So he's going to want a certain level of a contract, and he probably wants a level of a contract that Green Bay can't give and Watson can't get until he goes out and proves that he's healthy and still playing at a high level this season. So Green Bay right now, if they're offering him a contract, they're going to lowball him and say, you're coming off an ACL and MCL. You're going to play for like 5 games. You're going to be, 8 games. You're going to be limited in snaps. You've been injured your entire career. Here's what we're giving you. And Watson's going to say, why would I ever take that? Or his agent's going to say, why would he ever take that? He's going to play out this season. He's going to show what he's capable of. And we feel very confident he's going to be amazing. And he's going to either get that from you or from a team on the open market. So I think the bigger thing here is just that that's not an easy negotiation to take place when a guy's coming off an ACL and MCL, has missed a ton of time, and you have no idea what he's going to look like in 2025. So far, none of the guys on the defensive line are worth big contracts at the moment. Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah, I don't even think that's a controversial statement. But, I mean, Rashan Gary's already on a big contract. Kenny Clark's already on a big contract. Devontae Wyatt just got his 5th-year option picked up. So, in LVN, that contract negotiation's not happening anytime soon. So, it's not really a conversation for anyone at the moment, Colby. Bigger O-line and cutting down on drops and penalties. That's a great way to improve for sure. LVN doesn't take any steps this year. Do we think we draft a pass rusher in the first round in this next draft? Here's what I'll say, and it's not necessarily an LVN answer, okay? The answer to this overall question is Brian Gutekunst went shopping and spent a lot of money or capital with first-round draft picks and free agent money and 5th-year options on Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, LVN, and Rashan Gary. He spent big. And so far, he has not received anywhere near the ROI on that overall level of investment. To be fair, Kenny is a Ted Thompson pick, but you get my point. They've spent big in the trenches. They don't have the line that they would like to show for it. Instead of going over aggressive and trying to make over the defensive line, they said, we're going to bring in DeMarcus Covington, make a couple tweaks, bring in a Barron Sorrell, a Colin Oliver, a Warren Brinson, some of those sort of things. And we think, though, that still the core, Wyatt, Clark, LVN, and Gary, can be the guys that we get that ROI from. They just need to be focused in the right way. It's not that dissimilar of a discussion of they spent a ton on defense. They were not getting the ROI on it with Joe Barry. Instead of completely making over the defense, although they did go get Edgerrin Cooper and Xavier McKinney, which helped quite a bit. But instead of making over the entire defense, they said, we're going to get rid of Joe Barry and bring in Jeff Hafley. And Jeff Hafley was able to make it into a top 10 defense this past year. Now you're doing the same thing with the defensive line. You've already invested in it. You could try to tear it down and make it over, but probably the best first step is, hey, we are actually going to try something different, a new coach, see if we can get what we want out of them. If you go into this year, DeMarcus Covington, new defensive line coach, couple new pieces, and it's basically the same result, or if it's worse, you're now going into 2026 knowing that you're going to make some tweaks. You're probably moving on from Kenny Clark. LVN will probably not get his 5th-year option picked up. In fact, I would almost guarantee it. Rashan Gary, you probably keep for another year, but then are going to have to probably make a contract decision on him the year after that. And then Wyatt probably just plays out his 5th-year option, but you start investing a lot more in that defensive front. And then you probably start churning it, going in a different direction and trying to make it over in a different way. But the first step of this will be, can DeMarcus Covington salvage what they have? And if not, then it's going to be a extreme makeover defensive line edition 2026. There's a world where we get a Devondre Campbell situation with Isaiah Simmons. There is a world. Hopefully we get that world. At least Elton was on the field today. John Williams sighting too. They're always out there, but they didn't do anything. So it's no different than any of the other days. John Williams and Elton Jenkins both in attendance, but we know that already. Neither are close, or at least John Williams is not close to doing anything. Elton's just kind of working to the side. For perspective, you can make the same argument about Quay Walker, who until Hafley unlocked him was crap, basically vomit. Now imagine a world where Haf does the same routine and unlocks Simmons. Dream with me. Fair enough. Fair enough. What's up, Andy? You recently gave us your upcoming schedule of videos, but you forgot to mention what day the drink along Q&A is. Thank you for reminding me. Again, this is something I very much want to do. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen at some point. And hopefully I might have a day in mind. Let me see here. No, I don't think that's going to work, actually. I'll have to look. I was thinking I had one potentially, but I'm now thinking that I do not. So I'll keep an eye on it, though. We'll hopefully be able to work that sooner rather than later. Elton did not practice. Zane's a very good safety. I really like Zane. Again, I think sometimes we get into this, like we need to have conversations of who's better and who's worse. They're very lucky that they have Javon Bullard, Kitano Oladapo, and Zane Anderson all as backups. I would honestly make an argument for you that if they were going into this season with, I'm not saying comparatively, but I'll put it this way, a safety group of Javon Bullard, Zane Anderson, and Kitano Oladapo, that just trio in and of itself would be better than other teams have at safety in totality. And that's Green Bay's 3rd, 4th, and 5th safety. So I'll just put it that way. They have what I think are 5 starters at safety on this team, which is pretty impressive. I think Elton will be at center this year. Something will get done. I'm right there with you, Ed. The career resurgence part, not the whole weird stuff after that, just to be clear. Sorry, I'm not remembering the context of that. My apologies, Hassan. The pressure rate for LVN and Gary were better than most last season in fewer snaps. Double-digit sacks doesn't tell the whole story. I also don't think that pressure rate tells the whole story either. I just want to see more of an impact overall from this defensive front, and I think everyone does. Any idea why the contract details for Tom have not been released? No, not yet. Sometimes they take a weird amount of time. For reference, the Karlaftis ones have not been released either. Sometimes you get them like instantaneously, and other times they take forever. I don't know why or how or what goes into that, but sometimes it just happens that way. My daughter thinks our wide receiver should have ice cream with honey on the sidelines for sticky fingers this year. What do you think? They're going to be better. I'm no hot take here. There will be far fewer drops this year than we saw a year ago. But I do like your daughter's idea, Dale. That is awesome. And tell her I think she's amazing and should continue to come up with these incredible ideas, and that the Packers should hire her as a consultant. I think we go 5 deep in our edge room this season and believe that they will be game changers in different situations throughout the season. I hope you're right, Michael. That would be awesome. Hell yeah, go Packers. Love that. I think there's a chance that Watson tests the market. It's going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on. Holy cow, Andy, I'd be out of gas by now. Never running out of gas. Did need a drink, though. You see Watson getting the franchise. There is 0.0% chance that Christian Watson gets the franchise tag. 0.0. There's -% chance. I cannot even begin to imagine the season that Christian Watson would have to have in like 8 games coming off a torn ACL and MCL. I mean, you're probably talking about like he literally have to be Randy Moss reincarnate to get to that situation. It's negative percentage chances that it happens. Player you're most ready to see in preseason. I want to see how fun saving Marshawn Lloyd for me is easily my answer. Really excited to see Marshawn Lloyd. If someone told you only one of the following happened for the Packers this year, which is most likely? Top 5 offense, top 5 defense, top 15 special teams, which is the most likely? I'll still say top 5 offense. I think that's the most likely one of the 3, but I think all 3 of them are attainable. And I'll also say, I don't think any of the three are easily attainable. I'm not sure I would bet on any of them, but I also, again, think all three of them are there. But I would say offense, I think, has got the best opportunity. Are you so confident drops won't be an issue? It's not like we saw improvement much of the year went on. I disagree with that. I absolutely think we saw improvement. Wicks was much better in the second half of the season. I know Jaden Reed had a little bit of an issue in the second half, or maybe a lot of bit of an issue, but Jaden Reed throughout his college and pro career has not had an issue with it before, and do not believe that'll be an issue again. Watson's actually been very strong at catching the football in general. It's something that people think is bad for him because of that first big drop, and it's not been an issue at all. They'll get him back. Dobbs is a very consistent receiving target when it comes to catching the ball. Matthew Golden's hands have been fantastic so far. I don't really have concerns with Kraft or Musgrave. The running backs, I think, will be fine catching out of the backfield. And also, I said improved. I didn't say greatly improved. I just don't think there's any chance it's as bad as it was a season ago. And I do think it'll pretty easily be improved from where it was last year. Thank you for your coverage and opinions. You do a great job, Michael. I appreciate that. Rumor has it we might see Watson by week 5. What I would just suggest, Rick, is just nuke any expectations out of your mind. We have no idea. There could be setbacks. There could be accelerations. We could see him week 5. We could see him week 14. You know, these things are finicky. You just never know. He looks great running along the sidelines. As I've talked about before, David Bakhtiari coming off of his ACL the year after looked unbelievable moving around and doing some stuff already. And we know how that progressed. So, you know, it's going to happen when it happens. I have zero expectation as to when that happens. If it's week 5, great. But I don't even want it week 5. You know, if it's not Christian Watson, I want to see Christian be as close to Christian as he can possibly get. And when that happens and when he's ready to go and when he feels comfortable and the Packers feel comfortable, if that's week 14, but we actually get real Christian Watson, I would rather have that than week 5 and just having it feel like a shell of what it could be. So I'm not in a rush. They've got the depth and the talent in the meantime, and I'm just taking it, you know, when it comes, and I'll be excited when he's back out there. Something I've always been confused on. People still act like Watson can't catch when he's probably got the most sure hands on the team right now. Statistically, he's been fantastic catching the football. So again, it's a weird thing where people feel like it. Now, I will say some of the stuff tracking the ball and those sort of things have not been ideal at times. So some of those aren't counted as drops, but they're missed opportunities. So I still think there's opportunity to clean up some stuff there, but drops in and of itself have not been a major issue for Christian. What do you think is one thing that Love needs to improve on to be a top 5 quarterback in the league? Just consistency, footwork, and accuracy. And then I just think, again, understanding the situations where he needs to be careful and understanding the situations where he needs to be I don't even want to use the word gunslinger, but needs to maybe up the risk a little bit. So just kind of those nuances here and there. I think those few things could get him pretty easily to the top of the league if those would come to fruition. Was Jaden Reed this quiet in past training camps? Any concerns that he hasn't flashed so far this year? Sorry. I can't remember, honestly, Michael, what his training camp performances have been like in years past. But again, I have no concern on it. And I have no doubt that Jaden Reed's still going to be in for a very important season for Green Bay this year. No need to rush Watson back with the talent at wide receiver. I agree. Love needs identity. He thinks he needs to be Rodgers. AW, your comments have just been god awful. I don't think he has any desire to be Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's trying to be Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think, like, what if his identity is that he throws too many interceptions? That's an identity. You're just over. You're an absolute over today. But hey, there's always tomorrow. Go back, review the tape, check your pad level, and hopefully we get a little bit better out of you in tomorrow's live show. What is the practice schedule for this week? Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, family night, and then off Sunday. So pads tomorrow, Tuesday, and then again, Tuesday practice, off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, family night, Saturday, off Sunday. Throw terrible interceptions off back foot. I'm right, you're wrong. Still all for AW. But hey, again, maybe one of these, if you throw out like 100 comments, like you'll eventually just by chance, right? I mean, if you think Love has accuracy issues, my goodness, my friend, you're shooting over 10 so far. So yeah, you know, we'll maybe get there someday. But again, when you're used to being a Vikings or Bears or Lions fan and you're just used to losing all the time, that just gets ingrained in your DNA sometimes. So I get it. It's hard to come into a new situation, be around much smarter and more educated people. But again, if you hang out long enough, maybe 1 out of 10 of your takes will be right eventually. Don't think there's a single quarterback in the league who struggles to come from wanting to be like another quarterback. I would agree with that. Beast Bumblebee. And can an observer distinguish between some of our historic offenses and current teams at this point in the season? I would say no, but maybe somebody smarter than me could do that. But I would say my guess would be probably not. Maybe like the coaching staff to some extent, but that's a pretty tough thing to do overall. Andy, your responses to AW have me crying. Love it. Go Pack Go. Appreciate that, Autumn. He kind of makes it easy though. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, probably more accurate than AW. Fair enough. All right. I tend to agree with Mina Kimes. I think if Love threatened a little bit more with his legs when the defense turns it back, that could help. I think he will this year. I really do. He's not going to be a big time scrambler, but I do think we'll see him scramble a little bit more. I don't want to mute AW because I'm having a lot of fun listening to his incredibly wrong takes. So I don't need to get rid of him quite yet. Remember to like the stream, folks. Appreciate that. And then we're going to end with Jimmy here. Can't wait to see Golden running around out there week one. Intrigued to see Matt's approach with him early in the year. I'm excited to see how they utilize him as well. We did see some Reed and Golden together in some kind of stack sets today. So that was kind of cool to see because there is some question of like, how do you get Reed and Golden on the field at the same time with them being smaller, not great blockers. We know Matt doesn't really like that, but yeah, so that is a interesting piece as well. Hi, friends, that is going to do it for me today. Went a solid hour and a half plus. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be right back here tomorrow for the full breakdown. If you're a member, you'll probably get that a little bit earlier later tonight. And then, of course, tomorrow live after the practice as well. And then I think we're going to get Justice a little bit later in the week this week, but I'll keep you posted on that as well. See you guys all very, very soon. Thank you so much for being here, at least most of you. I will see you guys very soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.